Welcome to Love and Abuse, the show about helping you identify poisonous communication and toxic behavior. You deserve to be treated with respect and kindness. That's why it's important that you learn to pinpoint manipulative and controlling behavior so that you keep your power and your sanity. I'm your host, Paul Coliani. Hello and welcome to Love and Abuse. All the information in this podcast is meant for educational purposes only. Always seek a professional for your mental health and well-being, and always pick your battles wisely. I'm going to talk about a couple of things today. One of them was an email that I received a while back having to do with returning to an emotionally abusive relationship. And her question in a nutshell is there any coming back after the abuse? I've talked about this in several ways throughout these Love and Abuse episodes, and I think I talked about it in The Overwhelmed Brain as well, my other podcast. And the answer is yes, and the answer is no, and the answer is maybe. Of course, you need criteria of what a healthy relationship is to you. You need to be aware of your relationship boundaries. And I tell this to anyone that is either in a relationship or not. You have to have an understanding of your relationship boundaries. And what that means is that you have to know what is acceptable in a relationship and what is not. You have to know this. I know it's demanding of me to say, but I'm saying it because I want you to be aware of when something happens, if that thing that happened is a violation of your relationship boundary. I want you to know that before you get into a relationship, and if you didn't know it before you got in the relationship, then I want you to write down exactly what you believe is acceptable behavior and what is unacceptable behavior. And you do that by pretending you're single. So you could be in a romantic relationship right now and pretend you're single, and then write down what would be acceptable and what wouldn't be acceptable, or what would be unacceptable. This can also work for other types of relationships. It can work for family, for example. What is acceptable and what is unacceptable in a relationship with a member of your family, or even a friend, anyone? And in order to answer that, you have to imagine that you are not in the relationship with them, and then just write down what comes to mind. For example, if I imagined I was single right now, and I wanted to learn what my relationship boundaries were, I might write 2 columns, acceptable and not acceptable. And I'm really simplifying relationship values here. But I think it's okay to be simple every now and then. Let's look at it this way. What's acceptable and what's not? So on my list, I'm going to think about what I might be able to tolerate and be okay with. So relationship boundaries aren't necessarily about everything you love and everything you hate. They're really about the things that happen in a relationship, or in more difficult relationships even, that you can be okay with if they didn't stop happening. For example, pretending I'm single right now, if I knew I was going to get into a relationship one day, I would imagine what issues could come up. For example, my partner, my new girlfriend, she started drinking a lot. And I'm not talking about social gatherings or anything like that. I'm talking about to the point where she becomes embarrassingly drunk. And I have feelings about that, because we may be out and about and she's embarrassing. Maybe that's something I need to work on. Maybe I need to be more accepting with someone else's behavior, but I want you to be honest here. If I'm being honest, I don't want my girlfriend to be embarrassingly drunk. So I'm going to put on my list as unacceptable, embarrassingly drunk. What if, however, we were at a social gathering and she had trouble standing, maybe she was a little tipsy, would that be okay? And in my mind, I might say, well, yeah, of course, every now and then, I wouldn't have a problem with that. If it was a every week thing or an every night thing, I might have a problem with that. So part of that might go into unacceptable. The unacceptable part might be if it's a frequent pattern, then I don't want it. But if it's an every now and then thing, it'd be okay. So I'll put that in the acceptable column. Something else, maybe, how about if she starts taking drugs? I'll probably put it in the unacceptable column. You know, we would have a conversation about it. It's not like I would just end the relationship, but I'm pretending that I'm not in a relationship yet. And if these patterns or behaviors showed themselves, I can look at my list and say, that's in my unacceptable column. Now, at this point, I can ask myself, do I want to continue this relationship knowing a behavior is in my unacceptable column? And this is where things get tricky because we fall in love, don't we? We have a good time together most of the time and we're attached at the hip, or we just really think that there could be a nice future for us, yet there is something in the unacceptable column. At this point, I ask myself, if this never changed, would I be okay with it? And I like to put the word ever in there too. If this never, ever changed, would I be okay with it? If she never, ever stopped that behavior, would I be okay with it? I think it's a great question to ask yourself when you're in a relationship or before you get into a relationship, when you think about the things that are unacceptable for a relationship. And I'm sure you'll come up with a bunch of unacceptables because you've had relationships, or maybe you're in one now, where there is behavior that is unacceptable. Or at least that you know if you got into another relationship, you would not accept that behavior again, or you'd have a real problem with it. I like to say acceptable versus unacceptable because if you put it in the acceptable column, you can probably live with it and you can probably be okay with it and just let it slide off your chest and not have it be a problem in your life. You know, if you don't mind if someone smokes in your home, maybe you're a smoker, maybe you're not, but if you don't mind if your new partner or your family member smokes in your home, it's going to be in the acceptable list. And even if it annoys you, but it's acceptable, you'll still be okay. You won't hold anger. You won't hold resentment. And I'm not trying to make fun of smokers or single you out. I'm just saying that some people really can't stand it, and some people don't have a problem with it. So I'm thinking of something universal with the people that might have a problem with it. And if you don't have a problem with it, it becomes acceptable. If you have a slight problem with it and you think that it won't be a big issue, then it may become acceptable. But answer the question. If they never, ever changed that behavior, would it be okay? Or I should say, would you be okay with it? If you're okay with it, then life goes on. You see the behavior come out and it might annoy you. It might irritate you a little bit, but you don't hold any resentment. Nothing lingers and you just let it go. And when they stop doing the behavior, you don't think about it again. That is when you find something acceptable. When even if it annoys you, you can let it go. And your love doesn't diminish either. If you love and care for someone, and that love, the amount of love and the amount of care doesn't diminish because of that behavior, I'd put that in the acceptable column. I like the idea of having this. You don't necessarily have to write it down. I said maybe you could, but if you haven't done anything like this, an exercise like this ever, it's important to know what you find acceptable and what you don't, because when you get into a relationship that is more difficult than it needs to be, you need to know what is being violated. You need to know your own criteria. You need to know your qualifications for a minimally acceptable relationship and a maximally loving, caring, and long-term relationship. Because if you don't have this criteria or you're just winging it, then what ends up happening is you develop higher resilience and higher tolerance for behavior that you really don't like. And as that tolerance continues to grow throughout the weeks, months, and years, you end up diminishing yourself. Like I said in an earlier episode, it starts to eat away at the core of who you are. And when that happens, you become a shell of your former self. And that's why emotional abuse can be so devastating. It's just like an acid eating away at the inside of you. And I really don't want to paint this awful picture for you, because there's a lot of people listening right now that already feel this way. They don't need to be reminded. They don't want to come to this podcast and be uninspired and have no motivation to do anything because they feel lost or stuck. That's not what this is about. I'm just helping you establish a baseline of understanding of what you find acceptable and what you don't find acceptable, for the main reason of when you establish that baseline, you will have a strong foundation from which to make decisions. That is the most important part of my episode today. It's going to be the most important comment I'm going to make in this episode. So write this down. You will make decisions based on what's most important to you, what is acceptable to you, and what is unacceptable to you. And if you don't know what's most important to you, what's acceptable to you, and what's unacceptable to you, then you're going to be making decisions on the seat of your pants. And those decisions, because they're usually made on the fly, those decisions tend to be made from your fears and doubts, as opposed to decisions made from a place of knowing yourself and knowing what's important and what's acceptable and what's not acceptable well. In other words, when you make important decisions for yourself about the relationship, or at least ones that affect the relationship, if you have an established baseline and you know what's acceptable and what's not acceptable and what's important to you, then you're going to make decisions from that place instead of any fear or doubt that comes up. A good example of that is you want to go out with the girls or the guys or whoever you hang out with, and you just want to spend a few hours with them and be yourself. You just want to let go and be free for a while, whatever that means to you. And your partner or whoever you have this conversation with says, don't stay any later than 9 p.m. because I just don't want you out that late. You know, they say some sort of controlling statement that doesn't feel very good, like they're treating you like a child. So they say that, and you could respond from a place of fear, like, well, if I say that I'm going to be later, they might be angry at me, they might yell at me, they might make my life a living hell for the next week or month. So I better answer in a way that satisfies them, because otherwise I'll suffer the consequences. That's one way to answer. Or you can access your baseline of acceptable or not acceptable and what's important to you, and ask yourself, if I'm looking at my relationship values or my relationship boundaries, and on my unacceptable list is someone who controls me, now I have a different mindset. Now I'm looking at my list, or at least in my head, of this item in the unacceptable column that says someone who controls me. No, that's unacceptable. That's what I'm going to tell myself. That is unacceptable, and I won't tolerate that behavior. I don't want to live with somebody or be around someone who wants to control me. That is unacceptable. I will not accept that. I'm going to answer from that place instead. Now, that doesn't mean you have to be wholly assertive and say, no, I'm not coming home at 9. You're just going to have to live with it. I mean, you can. I don't really mind if you do that, but it's nice to approach it more diplomatically. You could say, look, I don't want to be with someone who tells me what to do. I really don't want to be with someone who tells me that, because I don't want to lose my independence. I don't want to lose the ability to be myself. And I really feel like staying out late and talking with my friends and not having to worry about the time. I might come home at 2 a.m. That's what I want to do. So if you really feel like you need to control me and control when I come home and control other things in my life, then we need to have a serious talk, because that is not acceptable to me. Now, I know this won't work with every person that is listening right now. I know that there have already been established baselines that are way below your standards and expectations and hopes and dreams. I know that some of these baselines are way in the gutter. And all I mean by that is some people have accepted and tolerated bad behavior for so long that the baseline is nothing but trying to avoid the bad behavior. It's not even about making the right decisions for you. It's just trying to avoid everything or trying to do the right thing all the time. It's that always catching up feeling and always walking on eggshells feeling. I don't want you to be there, and I know some people listening are. I know you might be there yourself, walking on eggshells or trying to figure out how to do the next best right thing, but that is often associated with a baseline that you've established for yourself. I want you to feel motivated to make decisions that are right for you, because you only have a certain number of years on this earth. And if you've spent most of them under someone else's controlling, manipulative ways, then your baseline needs to be moved way up. Your baseline needs to be moved up because you need to care for you. You need to have compassion for you if somebody else isn't. And that's even hard to say. I don't want to tell you that somebody else doesn't care about you. It's just that some people have an inability to care in a healthy way. It's not that you're unlovable. It's not that you aren't worthy or important or anything that makes you who you really are, which is amazing. It's that some people have an inability to connect with you in a healthy way or to love you in a healthy way. They might love you in a manipulative way. They might think that love is control and control is love. When I was in my 20s and some of my 30s, I thought love included control. I thought it was important that I maintain some control of my partner, because if I didn't, then I would lose love. And it was a very limited, very basic way of thinking, but I learned the hard way because it ruined my relationships. And when I finally decided to let go of the control and let my partner be who they are, let them do what they want, I learned something so valuable. I learned that they wanted to be with me more. They felt safer around me. They felt more loving toward me. They felt more comfortable with me because I was the person that let them be who they are. And I started developing the philosophy that I just want my partner to be happy. I learned that from my ex-wife. She said that her uncle just wants his wife to be happy. No matter what she does, he just wants her to be happy. If she's happy, he's happy. And I thought that is such an enlightened view. I mean, it was for me. It was an enlightening view. And from that moment on, I realized that has to be my philosophy. And that has to be the philosophy that I teach here. If you want someone to be happy, that means you support their path to happiness. And I think most people listening do that. But unfortunately, some people take advantage of that. And the nicer you are to them, the more they take advantage. I mean, with some people, this is what happens. This is why this show exists. Love and Abuse is all about mixing abusive behavior with loving behavior. You may be showing loving behavior and receiving abuse back. You may sometimes get loving behavior and still receive abuse later on. And of course, there are people listening now that do abusive behavior, even though they love the people that are in their life. But if you establish a philosophy of, I just want them to be happy, then everything you do and say supports their happiness. It supports their path. If they say, I want to go out with the girls or the boys or whoever tonight, and you think about the response that might make them happiest, you might say, I hope you have a great time. Enjoy. Call me if you need a ride. I just want you to have fun. Go enjoy yourself. And that's it. No strings attached. No weirdness like, well, where are you going to be and what time are you coming home? You just leave it open. But this is something that both people have to practice. If only one person is doing this and the other person is taking advantage of them or being emotionally abusive toward them or just doing harmful behavior in some way, then that's not going to work. I'm not saying that you say to someone that you suspect is cheating to go have a great time on their 2-day business trip. I mean, I know that's a trigger word here, but I'm not saying that at all. I'm not saying that the person experiencing any type of hurtful or harmful behavior needs to give the other person a free pass. That's not what this is about at all. I'm saying when you want to build or rebuild a loving, healthy, supportive, caring, compassionate relationship, supporting the other person's path to happiness is the best way I've found to do it. A good example of this is just before I met my girlfriend physically for the first time. We met online through a dating service, and at the time I decided that I wasn't ready to date. I told this story in other episodes, but I told her I'm not ready to date. I realized I signed up for this dating service way too soon. I'm still healing from some stuff. I still have a lot of work to do on myself, so I'm not ready to date. And she thought that was very honest. And we kept in touch, and we were just friends, and she was still trying to find someone in her life, and she was dating around and trying to figure things out for herself. And I would ask her how things were going, and there was never any weirdness like, well, who did you date and what'd you do? It wasn't like that at all. We were actually really good friends for a few months. And then one day we decided that we were going to start thinking about maybe getting closer, because I had done a lot of healing and we'd done a lot of talking, and it was nice to have that person. Everything I talked about, she understood, or at least let me converse with her on. It was great. And I was able to express myself, and she expressed herself. So we were clicking in every way. And then when we decided that perhaps there could be something more, some sort of maybe a romantic connection here, we both agreed that that would be a direction, that would be something we're going to try. So we need to meet in person. And, we were 1,000 miles away. That's why we hadn't met yet, but we were talking almost every day. So I said, great. Okay. I will put my energy toward that. Well, let's meet. And if it works, great. And if it doesn't, hey, we're still friends. No big deal. And we both agreed to that. And so a day or two later, I think one of us called each other, and she said, I'm going on a date tomorrow night. And I paused and I thought, wait a minute, you're going on a date? Well, I thought we kind of agreed that we were going to see if this works. And she paused for a second and she goes, well, I haven't even met you yet. I don't even know if this is going to work. And I said, well, we talked on the phone and I thought we were really connected. And I thought once we said that we're going to go forward with this, that it would be sort of exclusive. And, it was awkward. And she said, well, I didn't really expect to do that because, again, I could meet someone and they could be, the person that I want to see more of, because I don't really see you jumping on a plane and coming down here. And we had this awkward conversation, and I had these feelings about it, some old feelings, some old trigger feelings, like I didn't want her to do what she would do on her own if she were alone, which she was. She was single, and she was, of course, allowed to date until she found someone that she cared about and she wanted to spend time with. And so I had a challenge with it at first, and then we hung up, and I thought about it overnight, and I finally came to the realization that I'm not following my philosophy, and how dare I try to control her life from 1,000 miles away when we haven't even met. I was having these almost possessive thoughts, and it really smacked me in the face because it's old emotionally abusive behavior that was coming up in me, and it was not supportive of her happiness. Because we hadn't established a relationship yet. We just thought about maybe going forward with something to see what would happen. So I called her the next day and I said, I thought about what I said yesterday and I'm sorry. You are so right. I don't want to tell you that you can date or not. You are so right. We haven't met, and it was wrong of me to say that we should be exclusive, because who knows, maybe there is somebody that you meet that works out, and here I am holding you from that. And I just want to say that I'm not going to give you any grief over that, because you're absolutely right, and you should be able to date anyone you want until we meet, and if we meet and it works out, great. And I meant it. I meant every word. And she said, well, thank you. And I appreciate that. And conversation went on. We talked about other things, but later on, she sent me a message or something. It was either a text or email. And she said, I just wanted to let you know I signed off the dating service permanently and I won't be dating anyone else. I thought, whoa, I didn't mean for you to do that. I think I wrote her or I called her back. I said, I didn't mean for you to do that. I wasn't trying to say that as reverse psychology or anything like that. I really meant that you could date. And she goes, that's exactly why I did it. That's exactly why I signed off. That's exactly the reason I chose to stop seeing other people, because you said it was okay if I did. You didn't want to tell me what to do. You didn't want to control me. And that felt freeing. That gave me a choice instead of having no choice. You didn't try to guilt me. You didn't try, and I'm putting some words in her mouth here, but you didn't try to make me feel bad about it. At first you might have, but you didn't try to make me feel bad afterward. And you said, I am free to do whatever I want. And she said, that's what got me. And we talked about this later on after we met and after we established our long-term relationship now. She said, things like that you did to let me be myself and let me make my own choices is what attracted me to you more and more, and what has strengthened the bond over the years. Or at least, we've gotten closer and closer because of decisions like that. And that has been the new me ever since. Ever since I learned that from my ex-wife, I've learned that I just want my partner to be happy. I want her to be happy, and I want you to be happy too. And this is why I'm telling you this story, is that it's important to have someone in your life that just wants your happiness. You want people around you that honor you, honoring yourself. You want people around you that care about you caring for yourself. You want people around you that are happy that you're happy. If that's not your situation right now, it can be. And I'm not saying that means you leave the situation you're in. I'm just telling you to start establishing a baseline so that seed of what I said today starts blossoming in the back of your mind and transforms into something empowering to you so that you can start making decisions that are right for you. And you can start speaking in a way that supports your happiness and still loves those around you. I always say that when you can honor yourself while loving someone else, that is the healthiest way to communicate your wants and needs to other people. So this is what I've been doing for many years. So I'm here to tell you I've tested it over and over again. If there's something that comes up that she wants to do or say, and I have a problem with it, I do sometimes have problems with things that come up, and she has problems with me sometimes. It's just normal relationship stuff. When it happens, I access that philosophy in me, and I just tell myself, wait, I want her to be happy. If she wants to do this, it's important to her. I want her to be happy. It makes me happy to see her happy. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to let go of my judgments about it and support that. I don't do this every single time with every single thing, but most of the time I do. Most of the time, that's where I go. And we have arguments, we have conversations, we have love, we have care and respect, especially respect. Everything I do, I try to keep respect in there all the time. Even when we're in a heavy argument, I still want to respect her as a person, as a woman, as an equal. I always keep that level of respect. No one in this house is better than another person. No one is smart. Well, she's smarter. No one is really more wise than the other person, except in certain areas. But I think that's a great way to get along, is supporting each other's happiness. I mean, that's my definition for love, when you support the other person's happiness, or expanding upon that, when you support the other person's path to happiness. The trick is finding people that will do that same thing for you. It's not really a trick, because when you're doing it for yourself, those are the kind of people that you're going to let in your life anyway. When you are supporting your own happiness, when you are being kind and compassionate and caring and supportive to yourself, then when somebody comes along and tries to take any of that away from you, you won't stand for it. You will remember that baseline and you will say, that is not acceptable. I won't allow it. Period. Done. Conversation over. You may not be as assertive as I am, or maybe you are. I just know that when you establish these relationship boundaries, you get to honor your personal boundaries as well. And having someone honor you, honoring your own personal boundaries, creates a stronger relationship bond than anything I've ever experienced. I want that for you too. I hope this episode helps in some way today. Share this with others that might benefit. Love and Abuse is the official podcast of the MEAN Workbook, an assessment and healing guide for difficult relationships. The workbook provides an evaluation of your relationship based on a 200-point assessment. It's geared toward romantic relationships, but many have used it for family and others in their life that are being manipulative and emotionally abusive. If you are in a difficult relationship and you'd like to pinpoint the unhealthy behaviors causing you to leave so many interactions feeling bad, let the workbook help you discover specific components of bad behavior and put into words what you're experiencing. Get the tools you need to help you reach clarity. Visit loveandabuse.com for more information. This show exists to remind you that you are not alone and you're not going crazy. You deserve to be treated with respect and kindness. You deserve honesty and sincerity. You deserve to be treated as worthy and significant. Because you are. Thank you for joining me today. We'll talk again soon.